My life story has been one of focusing on a cause greater than self. I can't be the cause. I have to focus on a cause greater than self because there's so many causes, and the only thing we have to do, even earlier, but clearly in this moment, is to choose an area and go and work in that area and make a difference.
We're not careful because they control everything in this moment. We will become the dinosaur because they will not set back the clock. They will throw away the clock. And now they're just free to do whatever they want to do and when they want to do it. And it's our responsibility to have a voice to step up and lead and do this work and bring everybody who is physically able to come.
Mrs. Mattie McFadden-Lawson is a multi-talented civic leader, philanthropist, art advocate, mentor, and entrepreneur. Through her service and leading, we as a generation and those afterwards learn from her and understand that the present is always the best time and perhaps the only time to truly act and make a difference. Akwaba to Summertime.
Akwaba to Summertime, everyone. On today's episode of Telling Our Stories, I have here an amazing lady who teaches us that legacy isn't inherited, but built. Her story is so inspiring, and she has opened so many doors for so many people. I would love to welcome the beautiful Miss Mattie McFadden-Lawson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
It's a special place.
Akwaba to Ghana, how are you feeling so far?
I'm feeling great. This has been one of the most incredible experiences ever. I will treasure it for a lifetime. Just coming back home.
Yes.
And the meaning of that, coming back home.
I'm so happy that you came to Ghana. Absolutely. And I'm happy to meet you too.
My pleasure and honor.
Thank you. So I always love to talk about childhood.
Right.
Where were you raised and what was your family life like?
Okay, I was raised in South Carolina where I was born, and I was raised in an area called Scranton, South Carolina, which is a rural area, and we have family property there to this day. So my childhood really was about the land and being free to walk the land and experience the land. It was land that my mother inherited from her family members. Her grandmother was really the matriarch of the family, as well as her great-grandmother, I later found out. And when they came to the land, these two women built out 80 acres on their own.
Wow.
My grandmother and my
That is amazing.
great-grandmother.
I have a fun fact. My grandmother on my mom's side is actually from South Carolina as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a beautiful fun fact.
It truly is. And here we are, right? It's
we
really
are.
True. We're all over the world.
Now, as a young child, what were your interests? What were your favorite subjects and activities? And did you always dream about becoming who you are today?
Yes. And I think a lot of it came from the fact of how my mother spent her time. And she spent a lot of time giving and doing for others. She was selfless. And because of her own experience, I think too, because for the most part, she grew up as an orphan. She was reared by her brothers and her parents died at a very young age. So she had to learn how to, as she never used the word, but I know exactly what she was telling me as a young child. At a young age, she had to learn, because of her circumstances, how to navigate the world. And navigating the world, meaning knowing who you are in your place in the world and how you have to position yourself to be the best that you can be in that world.
And through that, you became an amazing woman.
Thank you.
So besides your mother, who were some of the people that have helped you and have helped build your character during your early years?
I would say in large part, it would be my family. I have an older sister, Eliza, who was almost like the second mother for all of us. We are a family of 6 siblings, and unfortunately, I've lost 2 brothers along the way. So now we're small, you know. And just growing up in a family whereby you have to learn to share, you have to learn to support each other. And I think after I had finished my education, my high school education, I moved to New York. I would definitely give my sister Eliza a lot of credit because she made sure I stayed on track to become the best that I could be. So she supported me through my college there in New York. She supported me while I went on to Howard. She supported me as I went on to Harvard. So I just feel abundantly blessed to have that support. And from my other siblings, my brother Olin and my youngest sister Isla.
Now, what was the transition like moving to New York and then going to Howard?
It was a hard transition. I'll be honest with you. It was one of adapting, for example, my mother could never understand the concept of paying rent. It's like you own the land. Why are you anywhere that you would have to pay rent? And Mom, it's really because of, opportunities. Mm-hmm. And from there, as I moved through life, one of the things that resonates with me is what Billie Jean King said in the tennis world. Mm-hmm. Champions always adjust. You make the adjustment. It's never going to be perfect. And if you expect to excel in life, you just make the adjustment. So it was a hard adjustment for me because, New York is one of those hard cities. And I had to thrive in that city, coming there when I was just 17 years old. Yes. And being able to navigate that world at 17 and also having the help of my family. But at that time, my sister, is married. She has her own family. So there were a number of things I just had to figure out on my own. But I always stayed true to my faith, my God, and the talents he had given me, and that I would use all of them to do good in the world. So that kept me focused. And I was able to navigate that world and then move on to grad school at Howard and then grad school at Harvard.
What was the transition like moving from Howard to Harvard?
It was even harder because here I was in quote unquote Black Mecca where everybody looks like me. And now all of a sudden I'm at Harvard and there is an air of elitism. There's no doubting that whatsoever. And when I came to Harvard, I was the youngest person in my class. I was in a class of career diplomats and government officials and leaders. And I was just 25 at the time. And I walked into a world whereby I was now in a setting where people had already established their place and space. And I was moving into what I was going to do to be that change agent as well. So it took a bit of getting adjusted, but I said to myself early on when I saw the landscape, I don't come with this experience, but I come with the ability to do this work. And that's when they will know how this young Black girl from Howard is sitting in this classroom with us at the age of 25, and she's getting a distinguished remark on every test she takes because I just did the work. I studied and I studied some more.
That's a strong mindset to have.
Yes.
Did you learn that by yourself or was that instilled in your family from young?
Well, my mother always treasured, education and made sure that we got a good education. And it was part of my upbringing. And I share this with friends all the time too. I'm not that old. However, I came from a generation whereby our friends also knew they were on a path to success. And that was being nourished by their families, their schools, and our churches. Those were the places and spaces we got our inspiration that we could be anything we wanted to be. And especially with our families. And my mother always knew other families and their children that I was friendly with. So you could always know where we are and what we're doing. But now I think even the little people are out with their cell phones and devices and nobody knows where anybody is. It seems it's like you're just a child and you have all of these devices, right? So I think it starts from parenting. And that's one of the things we have to talk about. And I know it's a difficult conversation for us to have, but it's a conversation that we must have. Where are we with our parenting? Because they're our kids and we have them first before they're released to the world.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we do not give them the nurturing and direction they need, then we are releasing them to the world and they have no idea where they're going to land. And we know the world in this moment and even at that time can be a very, very cruel place.
Yes, ma'am. So what are some lessons that you feel like need to be instilled in the youth from young?
I think if nothing else, and I say this time and time again, and it's true, to me and a lot of other people, because we're hearing this so much more than we've ever heard it in the past, that it's a time for us to know that we see each other, you know. And when I say, I see you, Salma, that gives you a sense of agency too, that I am now seen and I can now be heard because I'm communicating with people who have my interests, and I can do whatever I want to do because you are enough. And I think with all the negativity that our young people experience nowadays, there's this mentality that you're not enough. You have to be fixed. You have all of these issues. And I'm sure there are instances whereby there are issues that we really need to address, but we cannot create the mindset before you even get to first base that you're not enough and you have to be fixed. And if we instill that value in our young people that you are enough, I see you, and not only do I see you, but I'm willing to help you on your journey. Is there anything I can do to help you? Just tell me. Let's have a conversation about what your interests are. And maybe if I can help you, I will certainly do that. I think we have to get to that place. And I hope that our young people will believe that we will get to that place, and we show them, because, you know, seeing is believing.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
know, it's hard to believe when you don't see. So many of us, you know, now we've been so abundantly blessed. There's so many of us who can mentor, who can support and give them the support that.
Now, and speaking of mentorship and giving,
Yes.
when did you have that aha moment? The moment that you knew that you wanted to be a philanthropist?
I think it started early on because I've had an interesting experience growing up as a child, and this was spoken of when my mom passed away. There was a childhood friend who said, at that time, the kids would all gather and wait to see my mother turn the corner in her car, and she had a brand new Ford that she bought in 1956 when women were not driving.
Wow.
And she was driving her own car that she bought and was owning her place. And you were looking at a woman who came from a setting whereby she did not have the overall, you know, guidance of her parents, because her parents, you know, were deceased, but she had all of that wisdom poured into her by her grandmother and her great grandmother, which would have been my great great grandmother. Because as we talked, I would say to her, you have all this wisdom. And one day, quite frankly, it just came into our conversation how she had this wisdom. And I was just completely blown away. Okay. And it just takes me back to this incredible book called The Grace of Silence. How there are so many experiences that we as Black people have had, and they're so painful we don't share them. I cannot imagine what it was like in her era growing up as a young girl and not having a mother right there or a dad right there. But she had the love and support through her grandmother and her great grandmother. So we have to believe, and just knowing her experience and knowing that she saw in me certain gifts and talents that I didn't even see at that time. And I remember for special occasions, particularly Christmas, she would always ask me to come in the room. And I said, why? She said, I just want you to look at the room to make sure I have everything in place and it's beautiful. And I'm saying to myself, but I'm just a kid. And I would look and I would say, yes, but I would, if it's okay, I would move that over there because it creates, you know, a greater sense of unity with your decorations or whatever I would say to her. And it made sense to her, and she would move it, and it did change the whole look of the room, you know, at that point. And I just think our kids nowadays, for the most part, they miss so much of that. You know, just having parents there who can share things with them and see them, you know, as real people. There are no throwaway people. And I would say that to young people. Don't ever think that your life is worthless and you're a throwaway person. There's a special place for you, and you just have to be patient and do the work. Because I say this to my sons too when they were younger. I say, don't ever shortcut the process. Because you in that experience, you really lose the overall experience, and you also lose the blessing to come. You know, so just do the work, you know, and have faith, because people are watching. You might not even think, that you're being noticed, but you are being noticed. And like you, I am keeping my eyes on you to see where your journey goes. And I think it's going to go far because you've been abundantly blessed.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. Now, when you started out with being a philanthropist, did you face any challenges, and how were you able to overcome that?
The answer is yes. And I think my greatest challenge, I didn't have to know it, but I had to convince others that I belonged in the room and at the table. Because I've been in certain rooms, I've joined certain boards, and in a number of instances, people have just asked me, how did you get into this room? And I said, I've done the work. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I started my journey really being a servant leader. No one paid me any money. It was just the right thing to do, and I've always thought of being blessed with the gift of being both a servant leader and a team player and knowing which role is appropriate at any given time. I don't always have to lead. I can follow, but if you're not going to lead, then I will let you know. I will lead. And I will do what has to be done so that we all move forward as a group. So just making sure that people understand that. And it really doesn't take long for people to understand that, because the work, if you're in the right room, the work begins immediately. There's no postponing that. They want to see, what are you going to do? And what are you going to get done here? And what mark are you going to make? And as soon as I walk into the room, I know what mark I'm going to make. It's going to be a shift from whatever's happening here to my vision of where we can go and do so much more. And that starts with the whole issue of how do we become inclusive? And I started in dance, and I started on a dance committee at the Music Center, and later became chair of dance at the Music Center and a board member of the Music Center of the Performing Arts for Los Angeles County. You have to know what you're signing up for. Okay? When you, especially in the board settings, you have to know what each board will require of you. And if you can't deliver that, then you can't, in my mind, and I can't take that position. I've had certain boards say to me, well, we just need your name affiliated with what we're doing, Mattie. You don't have to do any work. And I said, that would be hard for me to do, to sign up to join any board, any organization. And there's no work for me to do, because I am about work. I am about elevating the organization and doing so much more for our community. And our community deserves that. And if I can't deliver that, then I don't need to be in that chair. It needs to go to someone else who's willing to do that work. And maybe I can cycle back at a time whereby I have more time. And that's another thing. We all don't, I think not all, but most of us, those of us who are busy, and my mom taught me that as well. If you ever want to get something done, find the busiest person you can. Because a busy person will always make the time to get it done. A person who has less going on will never, ever find the time to get it done. And it's true.
Wow.
And every time I take on an assignment, I think of who is it that is the busiest person that can help me with this undertaking. Wow. And I get started. Because they're out there. We know each other. It's Jack, I'm sure what you will become in the journalism, space. You will know each other. You will know, because not everybody is functioning at the same level. And we all want to be our best. So we know those people and we call on them. And because of my background, if I call on people, they're eager to respond. They're like, Mattie, we're going to be there to support you with whatever you're doing. The trip here, they were saying, tell us what you need from us. If you need anything, we're going with you. You're taking us with you. And the next time we will be there with you. And what an amazing experience. And I think that has to be the attitude, that we trust the person who's asking us to do the work, because that person is asking you to do the work. Like with political fundraising, I was able to do well in that role because my check was the first check on the table. And I, for the most part, was the first person maybe to host an event and host a successful fundraising event. Because in large part, that is what brought us to work so closely with former President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama.
That is amazing.
Yes.
What was your experience like working with Mr. Barack Obama and Miss Michelle Obama?
It was an experience, I feel, that I had tremendous honor to be asked to serve, to get to know them, and really to consider them family. My husband and I were the first to host at that time. He was the candidate. He was in the state house in Illinois, and he was running for the U.S. Senate. And we had an opportunity to host him in our home in Los Angeles. And we had a chance to host him when he later became the president of the United States. And of course, the First Lady. They are people who see people. And that's important. And, they all have their own stories as well. And they understand that we all have something to offer. And there's clearly something that we all can do. You cannot say in this moment, or quite frankly, any moment, there's nothing I can do. There's no value I bring to this conversation, this work. That's just not true. There's something that we all can do. And they give you the space to do that. So it was just an honor to know that they stood on integrity. There were no scandals when they were in the White House, not one. And in this moment we're currently in, we know it shifts every minute of the day. It's breaking news upon breaking news upon breaking news, So I think it's always, or it should always be a function of your leading with integrity, and that your character speaks volumes for you, and that they brought to that setting, and that they showcased around the globe when they were in office. So it was just a privilege and an honor to work with them.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Now, going back to what you said earlier, when you mentioned that we need to know when to take out time for ourselves and to step back, how are we going to be able to figure that out? Especially if we feel like we don't have anyone to back us up afterwards.
That is really going to be I feel, one of our biggest challenges. And that's why it's so important for us to understand this moment we're in. Because if we miss this moment of standing up and speaking up, and I always say locking aim and arms to do this work, I don't know if we'll ever be able to capture this moment again in history. So that's why we start where we are. We can't look through the rearview mirror. We are where we are, and we are where we are for a number of reasons, but that does not mean that we have to stay there. We have to own our own first degree of accountability. We cannot expect anyone to do more for us than we're willing to do for ourselves. So we're in that moment now whereby we really have to show up. We really have to show up across the board, and we have to start owning the fact that we are not mentoring and leading in the way that we should lead. This is one of the reasons, quite frankly, the Democratic Party is in the current state that it's in. Lack of leadership, lack of strategy, lack of direction. And now, if you really read the news, and I try not to read it too often, but I do check. I don't watch it. I check my news app on my iPhone to know what's going on in the world. We're fighting ourselves. It's like, it's the enemy within. And that's a harder fight than the enemy on the outside.
Because at least we would be unified to fight on the outside.
Right. So how can we begin to have the conversation about fighting the enemy on the outside who's knocking on our door? He's already here and has shown us what he is going to do. So that should not take anybody by surprise. So what is our response going to be to that in this moment? And we have to start thinking through this. And we should not be quick to respond. However, I think by now we've had enough time. He is the president. There is a completely new administration. The Republicans have control of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And we're still trying to figure out, what are we going to do in this moment? And I was just reading last night, it was a real confrontation amongst Democrats on the Senate floor, and there's nothing wrong with our having differences of opinion, but we need to sit down and understand. And I would say this specifically when it relates to people of color. I don't have to necessarily like you, but if we're in alignment on a specific issue, a cause, I should be able to enter a room, sit down with you, have a real substantive conversation, deal with the issues, and come out with some solutions. I should not be sitting there in the room like, I don't like those locks. I just don't. I mean, and unfortunately, we have so much of that in our community. I don't even know you and I don't like you. So how are you ever going to work with me if we don't get past that? And I think some of the progress that we're not making, if not most of the progress, really relies on the fact that we're in our own way. We're standing in our own way. We're blocking ourselves because these are only issues that we can fix. This is not about DEI. This is not about affirmative action. This is about us. And there are some things that we have to own in this moment. And if we do not own them, if we do not make ourselves accountable, then that front line will never emerge. That's our reality. Now, we can be in denial about that, but that's not going to happen because they're sitting back watching. We're not teaching because we're too busy, as your generation would say, hating. Okay, so how do you move? How do you move through that? And we won't get out of the way at the same time.
Yes.
So that is what we have to deal with. That is our greatest challenge. Let's get out of our own way. Let's trust each other. Let's work with each other. And let's really make some real changes that we can quantify at the end of the day. What did you end up doing? I can tell you, I'm really old school. I have this iPhone with far too many apps, but in my purse, you will always find my daily planner. That's my Bible. I read through it. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing. So I know exactly where I am at any given point in time. And we just have to be ready to have that hard conversation. I know it's a hard conversation, but we have to have it. It's the elephant in the living room. Now we can continue to walk around it and clean up after it until we're all exhausted and can't do anymore. And the elephant is still in the living room.
There you go. So then my next question is, because we are so divided as a people, we don't like each other. Then if you have the discussion about Africans coming in, we also don't like them. And all of that is just divided. What are the first steps in unifying?
Leadership. While I was here, and I'm going to really start to build out this theme because it's so dear to my heart, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. But just being here just put me in a place whereby it all just came together in a very organic way. We struggle with leadership. We elect people that we know who are not leaders to begin with. And that we have to stop. That's on us. And if by chance we don't know this person is a leader, and we found out that he or she is not, we allow that person to stay in that role. And it's killing us. It's killing our communities. It's killing our bringing forth that next generation of leaders. The leaders who are leading are not necessarily mentoring anyone to pass the baton to and get that person ready. So we are not constantly voting on someone that just happens to be on the platform and we feel we have to vote for because we don't have any choices. No, we should know who those choices are going to be. This is the lineup, folks. Let's just take sports, for example. Ongoing trading, right?
There's a lot of it.
There's a lot going on in the sports world. There's a lot that we can learn from that. Okay. We're just not going to let a player stay in that position if you are not ready almost every other season because of some injury or some other issue in your life. And I understand people get injured, but then again, what's happening now too that has got my attention in the sports world is the amount of violence in that world. All kinds of things, prevent you're in court or you're about to go to court for some charge. All of that gets in the way for that team being the best team it can be. So either you let go and no one else will pick you up with that history, or you may not perform it you may not be performing at a certain level. So you're going to be transferred out, and they're going to bring in somebody else who can get the job done. The second thing I would say with leadership, strategy. What is our strategy? Because you can have the right leader in place, but what is our strategy to get the work done that we need to get done? And as people have talked to me about this moment we're in, what is your strategy, Mattie? I said, well, I'll be very clear. I am looking for options. I am looking for people that I can work with who are already doing the work, or they want to do the work, and they're looking for partnerships. And that's why I'm in Ghana today. How we partner and how we move Ghana forward, and how we move those of us from the diaspora forward, working with Ghana. You got to have a strategy. The third thing I would say is accountability. Did you do what you say you were going to do? That's very quantifiable, right? That's not rocket science. If you stepped into this saying, Mattie, you said you were coming for the interview. Did you show up for the interview? Yes, I did. As tired as I was not going to disappoint you by not showing up. That's a commitment that I made, and I'm going to honor it. I'm accountable to me first. I'm not going to say, well, maybe she'll be late and it won't matter. Or maybe she's just like I am. She's tired too, and she'll call me. I mean, these things go through your head. Let's just be honest. We're human, because I hear them a lot. It's like, no, that's not the right answer. I'm going to be there. You need to be there. Accountability. I would say the fourth thing is execution. We as a people can talk a problem to death. Yes. Laughed at. I mean, and I can speak. All of this is so perfect, this conversation we're having, because these are the hard conversations we have to start having. Can we now talk about the solutions to some of these problems? We know what they are. Is anybody working on a solution or solutions? Let's get that work done, and execute on that. And then we have to have results. After we worked on our leadership, after we worked on our strategy, we worked on our accountability, we worked on our execution. What were our results? Because there are so many times, I don't know what people are doing. It's like, now, what are you doing? What are you really doing? I think I know what you're doing, because I haven't seen any results. I'm very data driven. What did you really get done at the end of the day? Now, let's have a conversation about that, so the world knows that we are being productive in this work and we're getting things done. And I think right now, that's one of the things people just don't see. Yes. What are you getting done?
There's a lot of talk, but you got to get things done.
Right. And that is where we have to lead by example, because young people are not stupid. You're watching this play out in real time. It's like, really? I could have gotten that done last month if anybody had asked me. You're on social media, you're communicating with people. If I want to have an event and I have short notice, I call my sons. Okay, I need you to make sure that your group is represented at this event at our home. And literally with 10 minutes, they'll call back, because they know it's getting out of control now. How many people, Mom? I said, I don't want you to invite everybody, but if you bring like maybe 30 or 40 people, that's your group well represented. That's how you move, because you're on those platforms and you're talking to each other. I talk to people who are running these campaigns all the time, and I'm like, well, so who's head of your social media campaign? We haven't gotten to that yet. Okay. Well, when you lose, you'll have a whole lot of time to think about that, but you would have lost. So your time would have come and gone, and now you're back into hopefully the next election. So it's those 5 principles that I'm moving on now. That's my strategy.
So my follow-up question to you, I actually have 2 from that.
Okay.
One, even when you see that somebody's working, I noticed that another problem is people, again, start to hate. And then through that, they bring the person down. It's like the crabs in a barrel mentality. How are we able to get over that?
I try my best to make it known when I'm working on a project. We will have none of that. We will have no drama. It's about leadership. We will have no drama. We might have issues here. We might disagree, but we will not have any drama that will prevent us from doing the work. And I lead on that. I hold myself accountable. Okay. And I think when people see that, you have less of that happening. But if my ear is open to hearing about that madness, okay, then I'm pulled into it. And that's taking energy away from what I really should be focusing on and what the group in general should be focusing on. I led in 2012. I led, starting really 2011, going into 2012, I was asked to lead the effort in California for Women for Obama for Southern California, which is Southern California, Colorado, and Nevada. And I led on that. And I started with nothing. I had to build that out with absolutely nothing. And I started with 10 women leaders, the busiest, 9 actually. I made the 10th. 9 women leaders. And we established a committee, the busiest women I could find, making a difference in Southern California. I said, this is my vision of how we're going to build this out. The next meeting, I want you to bring a woman like yourself into this. And if you don't have a woman that you need to help you in this effort or to help us in this effort, then I will introduce you to a woman so you won't feel like you're at the table by yourself. And everybody came to the next meeting and we had 20 women at that meeting. And then the next meeting we had 30 and we ended up with close to 1,000 women when we were done.
Wow.
Because we just kept coming with the women, and it's all about sharing. It's about making it understood that we have to work together. We can't have this division and we can have this, but we won't go anywhere. And I tell friends all the time, what will happen at the end of the day, and I know this sounds very dismal, but it's very true. We will become extinct like the dinosaur. In this moment, if we do not act, think about it, 8 years with President Obama, 8 years for us to figure some things out. And we didn't get it done then. So that set us back. And we knew that DEI was definitely on the chopping block. They'd already killed affirmative action. And I'm not saying that those programs should just stop us from being the best we can be. We know if we didn't have the element of racism, we would never need those programs because it would be a level playing field and you open that door and we would step up and we would outperform you every day. It's just who we are. We know that. So why are we acting in this moment? Like, I really feel in this moment, we're behaving like we're still having this memorial that DEI is dead. Yes, it's dead and it's never going to be resurrected. What are you going to do now? And we still don't have a plan.
So then do you see our unification happening in our lifetime?
I do. And it will happen, quite honestly, when we make room for you, when we get out of our own way. I don't want to have to step to a microphone and keep saying, I have been doing this for 30 years. But here are all the people that I brought with me. And not a lot of people can say that. And I'm not about tooting my own horn. But if I asked those people to stand up, they would stand up around the globe. Yes, she brought me into her space. She worked with me. She mentored me. She gave me a platform. That's how it happens. You see it happening everywhere, really everywhere else.
Yes.
It's not rocket science. We're making it complicated and it's not. We have to look in our communities and say, who will be our next group of leaders? Because there's aspiration there. And now let's bring you to the forefront. Okay, the same thing was with President Obama in Chicago. There were leaders who admitted that. We saw him, and we saw him all the way in the backfield. And then we had to make a decision that we have to open up the field so he can carry this ball for us and score. And that he did. But now we're unfortunately in this space that, no, we're going to just create a line and you're not going to penetrate this line.
I don't know why.
And again, it goes back to the mentality that we're not enough.
That starts out from childhood, so it's all
we
about
have to
the way
focus
we raise.
on our healing too with all of this. Let's just have a moment whereby we heal. And we also understand that if we miss this moment, we've already been set back. I mean, because look at the Supreme Court. That's a job for life, a federal appointment. You almost have to take yourself out of that role. So everybody that President Trump has appointed, and I'm sure he's looking around the court now to see who's up next, because he has a bench ready to go, qualified or unqualified, okay? He has a bench. They're going to determine who we are. You know, and with the legislation that's changing, how do you change the Constitution to say, although you were born in the U.S., you're not a U.S. citizen? How do you change that? And if we're not careful, because they control everything in this moment, we will become the dinosaur, because they will not set back the clock. They will throw away the clock. And now they're just free to do whatever they want to do and when they want to do it. And it's our responsibility to have a voice, to step up and lead and do this work and bring everybody who is physically able to come along with us and stop looking at, you know, Sama and saying, oh, she's so young, she can wait her turn. No, you can't. There's no waiting anymore. If you're ready, then we have to help you go.
And even tomorrow's not promised.
No, the next moment. I've seen situations recently, and all of a sudden, that's where we are in this world. People wake up one morning. I mean, let's face it. Look at, and I know his mom. My heart goes out for her. Malcolm Jamal Warner went out with his daughter swimming. Who would have thought he would not have come back home that day? I mean, and there are more stories like that. I mean, look at the legislators who woke up that particular morning. I think, they woke up that particular morning in Minnesota. Some crazed person decided, you know, you're a Democrat and you don't serve any purpose, and I'm going to kill you. And they're murdered in their own home. I mean, it is completely out of control, and I'm not too sure we're really paying attention. So this is just where we are. We have to pay attention, and I don't think we're paying attention, because there's no excuse for us not to have a plan by now.
And we have to have, like you said, the hard conversations, and it starts with when you're talking to your children when they're growing up. So how are we going to be able to have these conversations? Because I feel like for some people, they're like, oh, you're too young. We don't want to tell you the harsh truth. We want to shield you and wait till you get older. But then it's too late because the world already has them. So how can we have these hard conversations and break through the generational curses that kind of chain us?
This is the other elephant in the living room. And we control this narrative because it's no secret. We have to work together, period. We have to work together. I have to trust you. You have to trust me. We can disagree, but it's not going to interfere with our getting something done. It's not rocket science. It starts with trust. I trust you enough that I can work with you, and hopefully we're going to learn something from each other when we work together. Nobody has a patent on intelligence. We all have something to bring to the table. You know, I want to hear your thoughts. You know, when I was working, one of the things that came out of my leadership with Women for Obama for Southern California, I created a pipeline of leadership with young women that I knew all had the ability to be leaders, to just train them in this work that I'm doing, the political fundraising aspect of it, the roundtables, et cetera, so you could now host your own events. And that's precisely what they're doing. They know how to host, they know how to raise money, they know what must be done, but someone had to teach them. Someone had to make the time. And now we're all so busy, so few of us will make time for anything. And people ask me, how do you get all of this done, Mattie? I say, because I always remember what my mom told me. You find the busiest person. And I'm the busiest person. I know who those people are. So when I hear from someone, oh, Mattie, I'm just too busy. I'm so sorry. I couldn't get back to you right away. I said, but let me just tell you what business is like. I know some amazing brothers in high finance who might be anywhere on the globe. And if I call on them, I don't call, I text. That's how I communicate with people for the most part. And they know that. I would say within 2 hours, regardless of where they are in the world, I'm going to hear back from them. So what are you really doing? You're right here. What are you really doing that you can't text me back? Right. We get so caught up with how we're so busy, we just don't have time. We don't have time for ourselves. Because through all that busyness, are you really taking the time like we are right now and just having a real conversation about what's happening in this world? I do have hope because I'm still in it. And I'm in it for all the right reasons. I'm not ego driven. I'm passion and purpose driven. And that's how I get a lot of my work done. It's not rocket science.
That's beautiful.
And because I'm spiritual, I just have this deep faith that when you're out there living your true purpose that God has placed on your heart, He will send you the right people to help. He will send you those helpmates because He knows you cannot do it all by yourself.
My mother would call them destiny helpers.
Really. They're your helpmates. They help you through this journey. And we have to recognize that. Sometimes we're so dismissive. There's scripture that talks about be careful how you entertain men because you might be sitting in the midst of angels. And we can just come and sit down. I've been in settings and people will come into a room and just sit down and look straight ahead. No conversation. And then when my name is announced and I stand up, either I'm speaking or I'm just being recognized, you're like, oh my God, we didn't know that was Mattie McFadden-Lawson. Oh my God, now everybody wants to have a conversation. But I've been sitting there through an entire event for like the last 2 hours and you're looking straight ahead. You didn't even establish eye contact with me.
Not even a hi?
Oh, trust me. Keep living.
Oh, so that's mean.
Yeah, just keep living. I'm serious, and I don't mean that in a flippant way, but that is what we have to break through. I'm not there for you to recognize me, but my goodness, say hello. How are you doing?
Normal etiquette.
No, let's establish some connection. But no, we're going to sit here and like, oh, you're that woman. Oh my God, you're that woman. And then, well, could I have a card, please? Now we want to connect because there's something I want from you now.
Yeah.
So I can now acknowledge you, whereby I just see people because you're a person. And I want you to know I see you.
And that makes all the difference.
Our ancestors did so much more with little, very, very little, than we have done with so much more.
Now, do you feel like that is also because we feel like once we get on the stage of, oh, we're prospering and we're wealthy, we don't want to give back? And, oh, I don't think they'll appreciate me like that. I don't think they're going to really appreciate me. So no, I'm not going to give back. I'm going to give everywhere else, going to give to everyone else, but not to our own people. Do you feel like that's also the case?
I don't think that is so much. That could be part of it, but I think at the end of the day, we have become very comfortable as if we got here all by ourselves. And therefore, I can enter a room and I'm sitting at a table of 10 and most of the people might walk out of that event never establishing eye contact with each other or a conversation. Okay? And we cannot get to a place whereby we think that what we have accomplished, what we have, I call it our stuff, cannot be taken away from us. Or we cannot be taken away from our stuff. There's a real balance there that we need to be clear about. I've seen so much of it happen. I mean, so many people are transitioning and they have all of the stuff. So what did you do with it? How have you handled making sure that richness of blessings will be passed on to someone else in some form of fashion? Or did you just hold on to it forever? And now it will go wherever it goes, to the state in some cases, depending on what the probate laws are for a particular state. Is if there's no will, then it goes to the state and then the state will distribute it. Each state has its own, laws. So it's just an interesting moment for us to to be in, if anything, I think we need to remember, I think every American, however they can get here, and especially those of us of the diaspora, should get back home and have that experience and go into those dungeons and see what our ancestors dealt with. It's life-changing for me. I had read about it. People who had experiences going into the dungeons had told me about it, but it was just a completely different experience being in that small space and understanding the history, because I was sharing with my friends, I said, the history we were taught, for the most part, when you think of Africa, that the colonizer really
Was doing them a favor.
No, in that too, the colonizer were the English. No, it started with the Dutch.
Yep.
You know, because you have to keep reading at some point, and oftentimes on your own, to find out that whole path. That's why I enjoy going to the Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian, which lays out that whole trade process. But I think with that being said too, I don't want us to just live in the moment of enslavement. I want us to live in the moment of what we did when we got here. Let's showcase that story, because Frederick Douglass came here as a child, unattended, like these poor migrant children, except that he was captured at 7. No family. I just cannot even imagine what the world put upon him as a child. And that's when my dear friend, Governor Westmore, was being installed as the first ever, African-American governor of the state of Maryland. His opening ceremony took place at the dock where the ships arrived, and young Frederick Douglass, at the age of 7, got off in chains. And when you saw some of the museums here had, but you definitely see them at the Smithsonian, you just understand the breadth and the depth of the slave trade when you see those small shackles for children. So I think if we could understand more of our own history, that would be a good starting point. And we have to teach that. We have to teach that ourselves. I look at all the other communities, the Jewish communities, you have all of these synagogues, the Asian communities, you have all of these community centers where they are teaching their kids about their history. And I don't know any community right now whereby I can say there is a center for sure that's doing that work and has been in the community for the longest period of time. And you have these centers, since I'm from LA, all over. We have to start telling our kids their story and how they bring value. So if our ancestors could endure that kind of pain and oppression, I can't get tired. I can't. I can't. I have to stay on the front lines as long as I can. And the good news is that I will have people standing with me as well. And hopefully generations will step forward and they're in a position to lead because we would have delivered on our commitment to them to create space for them.
So I have 2 follow-up questions from that. 1, do you feel like we as African diaspora and African Americans and Africans ourselves are still living under a colonized mindset where we are at odds with each other, but love everyone else?
I think so too. I definitely think we are still living with that mentality because we still think that we're not enough because we were told we weren't enough. And there's so much division because of how we came to this country. I had a very interesting experience, and I think this was the high point. And I've had so many experiences here, but I really think this was the high point of my experience here. We were in the Cape Coast region. We went to the last event for Panafest, and we visited the historical area where the slaves, and I was hearing about this for the very first time, and I'm not embarrassed to mention it, where the slaves took their last bath. Now you have to remember, they came in as slaves. They stayed at the various holding dungeons. In some cases, the women were in dungeons that should maybe accommodate no more than 50 people, and 300 women were there. For men, because they looked at the men as providing most of the labor, some of the men were in holding dungeons that were probably equipped to hold no more than 200 people. And sometimes there were at least 1,000 men there. You've not had a bath. So all of your bodily functions took place in those dungeons to the point that it created the floor of the dungeons. So when you go there and you experience the dungeons, the floors really have been created over time from human excrements. And when they were fed, there was a tiny hole in the ceiling that provided some sunlight for them and just a small window for air. Their food was dropped down into those excrements, and that's where they ate their food. So now, and you are there for 3 months. Now the bigger ships are docking because now they have decided where they are going to place you in various parts of the world. And they take you down to this lake where you have your last bath. And I was told that it changed the whole nature of that lake until it was used for that purpose of the last bath. Usually for a lake, it flows water. It's flowing in one direction for the most part. As they start to bring people there for their last bath, the lake started traversing in different directions as if it knew that this is the history of these people. And this is how their lives will move for them once they leave here. They have no idea where they're going. They will forever be separated, and nothing will flow as it has flowed in the past. And the bed of the river is in solid gold. You can see the gold sediments. And it is believed that the ancestors curse the river so that if anybody tries to come there and disturb that gold, woe be unto you. There's no one who can tell the story about what happened if anyone tried to disturb the gold. They said you can reach in, you can let the water, and I did so, flow through your fingers, and you can see the gold sediments on your hand, and you just rinse it off in the water, and then we left. But that was one of the most moving experiences, just to know that those ancestors of ours had that as their departing experience. And now the dungeons are free, so the ships are docking for the next group to be placed in the dungeons it was a system for 3 solid months under the same conditions, if not worse by that time. And then the next ship that will take you to your various points in the world where you will work for free until you die, for the most part, until it docks.
That's sad.
Yeah, so I think if most people knew that, if most people could experience that, but we have to now be of the mindset that we're going to tell our own story, and we have to start telling it when these kids are in the womb because they understand, I'm convinced. We have to start telling our story because as a well-educated person, I learned so much just this past Friday from being, at the lake where the last bath took place, and to see that river and how it's just moving in so many directions and how it flowed very smoothly until it became the lake where the enslaved took their last bath.
And that's what my platform, Summertime, is for, to tell
Yes.
our stories. That is my whole plight, because I feel like if we don't tell it, who will? Because most likely, people are not going to tell it. Or if they do, they're going to misconstrue it in such a way where it's not our own anymore. And then we lose our history and we lose the pieces of ourselves that make us who we are.
Absolutely.
So that's why it's so important to tell our stories, because stories are one of the things that have kept people rooted for generations upon
Connected.
generations upon generations. If you see nothing else that has stayed consistent since humans have been in existence, it's been storytelling. So that's why stories are so important.
Oh, absolutely. And we need to hear more and more of these stories. And we have to start telling these stories ourselves and not be ashamed of what happened. Our kids need to know, because as an adult, and I'm hearing this,
I mean, it just took my breath away. I left there in a lot of ways just sort of feeling lifeless, like, wow, that was an experience like no other. And to really get the story right, you have to come here and experience it for yourself. But it's those dungeons. And I actually stood in the doorway, the door of no return. And earlier, the door was created this massive door was created to move shipments of gold into the forts as they were raping Africa of its resources. And then they decided, oh, you mean to tell me if we sort of think this thing through and develop a strategy, slavery could be even more profitable? We could get free labor to really build out the world, and especially the Americas? Then let's do that. So the doorway is now a fourth of the size, and they've left the outline of what the door was when they were moving in the big chests of gold, and how they diminished it by three quarters. So that in order for the men, and particularly the men, but anybody, to get through this tiny doorway, and you're all chained together, I think they moved them as groups of 10 out of the dungeon. Now you gotta go down a ladder in unison, lockstep motion, chain 10 men. Some didn't even make it down the ladder, because if one had a misstep, everybody fell and you were dead before you could even get on the ship. Just the horrors. And I mean, when you just think, what the mentality, I can't even think about it. I don't want to think about it, because we as a people of color, we've never experienced that level of brutality. How could any human do this to another human? And then we were told the story with the women. The governor of these various, forts, their wives were wherever they were, and their families weren't here. So whenever they felt like they had to have intimate relations, they would have someone go into the dungeons and maybe bring out about 10 women. And then he had a choice, literally, of which of the 10 he would rape. The other 9 were taken back. That one was still in shackles. She was hosed down until I guess they assumed she was as clean as she was ever going to be. She was dressed, and then she marched up the stairs directly to, and it's interesting, exactly where the governor made his speeches and greeted his army. His bedroom was just some distance away from that space, that terrace. The woman took the back stairs up from where they're also soul slaves. This kind of center area. And then you go into the dungeons. Once she was deemed appropriately clean, since she had been in the dungeons for God knows how long, then she carried herself up, was escorted up, still bound. And the governor proceeded to rape her as long as he wanted to rape her. And oftentimes, by the time the big ship came to now take them to their point of destination, she was already pregnant with child, still in shackles. And the conditions on the slave ships weren't any better. We cannot get tired because the ancestors are expecting us in this moment to rise up.
And that goes as far as to show how brutal and how terrible our history was, but at the same time, how resilient of a people that we are, because to still be here today, to still exist today, after all of that trauma from our ancestors means that we're resilient people.
Right.
But we can't let that go to waste.
No, we can't.
Because we've had so many people who've tried to stand up for our rights, who have done things for us, such as Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. You have so many different people. We can't let that all go to waste.
No, we can't. And that's why we need to know our history. And that's why they do not want us to tell our history. Okay? It's history by definition. So why should we want to tell it? I mean, to ban these books and to ban the teaching, of our history, to ban departments of African American studies, it is beyond insane. But we know the purpose of that, because when you destroy a person's history, you destroy that person. Okay? And if we could just keep our mantra being, and this is what I tell our young people when I speak to them, you are the sons and daughters of kings and queens. No one got out of bed one day and decided they wanted to be a rapper. You are the descendants of kings and queens. The legendary ruler in Mali, Mansa, Emperor Mansa, even by today's wealth, with all the wealth out there, with Elon Musk entering a zone of being the first trillionaire, there is still no other person, but you're not going to hear about that, on the planet that will ever have the wealth of this Emperor of Mali, even by today's standards. He was wealthy then, and he is still wealthy wherever he is now in the universe. If our kids just understood that part, and it's not about wealth, it's about leadership and ruling and having a strategy. And my husband was telling me, and I got it, and I seriously recommend it for anybody to really have a better understanding of how the narrative has to move beyond enslavement to how we also on our own created the basis of this financial market. Because as Africans, we were doing business around the globe before Christopher Columbus. And there is this brother, I think he might be out of Rutgers University. I'm going to get your information and send you the information, because everybody needs to read this book if you haven't read it. Before Christopher Columbus, we were on the ocean trading and doing business before he ever got lost and said, oh, am I in America? Where am I? Everywhere around the globe where he landed, they were saying, oh, we do business with the Nubians. We have been doing business with them for years. But you don't hear anything about that. And I'm telling the head here of the Ghana Tourism Authority that we need to start telling that story. We need to start telling that story all together, especially as the Pan-African Festival is taking place too. So the narrative is just not our enslavement. It's what we did after we came out of that. And there's a story that we don't really talk about other than you can't cover everybody. Black History Month. I'm telling you, again, I'm not a millennial, okay? My granddaughter and her role in her Black History program is the first time, now this is on us, I ever knew Frederick Douglass had a wife. Anne Douglass, who was just as prominent in the movement as he was. And I am so proud of her. She got up before the audience, told her story, gave her speech, started in Spanish, then went to English, and then ended in Japanese about who Anne Douglass was. And I was like, she has memorized all of this. It was her. I was telling my sister about it. She said, okay, send me everything about that Black History program because I don't know any of those people they were talking about other than Rosa Parks. It was done in categories in terms of our contributions. But did you know Frederick Douglass had a wife? Can you imagine? Somebody needs to tell that story. Anne Douglass was her name. And she was just as committed to the struggle as he was. But you never, with all of the Black history I have heard since I was a child, I only heard of Coretta Scott King, Dr. Martin Luther King's wife. And even at the end, they didn't acknowledge her the way they should have. How do you create a monument for Dr. King and there's no mention, not even inscription of his wife's name anywhere near it? I don't know who was in charge of that program, and the wrong person did it, quite frankly. Are you familiar with this sculptor? Her name is Artist Lane. She's amazing. She's the person who should have gotten that job. But the job, again, went to an Asian sculptor. And no one ever thought who was around Dr. King at that time, and even the people on that committee that planned that monument, that we honor her too. At least have a garden, whatever you're going to have. We know you might not do a sculpture. You really, as a sculptor, you might not do a complete sculpture of her, but there has to be some acknowledgement about her role as his wife. Nothing. It's like, how did that happen? That's why we have to have people everywhere. And we have to have leaders everywhere, because I am convinced that committee probably did not have a woman on it, because a woman would have said immediately, well, what about Coretta Scott King? How are we going to honor her?
How would you describe your life's journey in one sentence and why?
One sentence, my life story. Wow. My life story has been one of focusing on a cause greater than self. I can't be the cause. I have to focus on a cause greater than self, because there's so many causes, and the only thing we have to do, even earlier, but clearly in this moment, is to choose an area and go and work in that area and make a difference.
And that's it. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this conversation. I had learned so much from you. And these are the conversations that we need to have between our people, from the people who have already lived these experiences and are there to teach the youth. We need to have more of this. So thank you so much for giving me your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I just want you to know I am so proud of everything that you're doing and the impact that you currently are making in this world, in this moment, and what you are likely to do in years to come, because you've been abundantly blessed. And if there's any way I can help you on your journey, I'm here to help you. And as the saying goes, you make the ancestors proud.
Thank you so much. And I hope you guys have learned from this interview. I've certainly have. And remember, our stories are so important and your story matters. We are telling our stories. Until next time on Summertime. And it's a wrap.
That was wonderful. Thank
you.
you.